Thank you so much for coming. This is the second to last in our webinar series for the Cogeneration Affinity Network for this year. And today we're going to be talking about embedding cogeneration in the campus experience. We're going to be looking at how cogeneration becomes institutionalized through the curriculum, through community partnerships, as well as core campus systems. My name is Rue. I'm a student at the College of DuPage, which is a community college in Illinois, where I'm studying human services. And I'm also a CoGen fellow in which I have been involved in helping to uh, run our inaugural year for the student ambassador program for cogeneration. So it's been really, really fun to be involved in this work. I'd like to introduce you to my illustrious co-host, who's just been a total hero. She's sick today, and she still showed up to be here with you all, and she's sort of the mastermind between all of the content that we're going to be sharing with you today. So I'll just pass it off to Jennifer a quick sec to say hello.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My voice is strained. I'm still recovering, but I'm not in pain while I talk. But thanks so much for being here. And thank you to Rue for covering. And glad to see you all.
Thank you, Jenna. If we can move to the next slide, when we always like to open each of our sessions by getting a sense of who's in the room and also grounding in our principles for this movement and this work. So let's start with just getting a sense of who, go ahead and just raise your hand or drop into the chat. If it's your first time here, you can kind of use the reaction emojis. Okay, welcome to anyone who's their first time here. And it's never too late to get started. And then raise your hand if you've been to another one of our webinars and are returning to us. Okay, thanks for coming back. Thanks for continuing this work. It's great to see how this community is continuing to grow month by month. So we're going to start and end our session with the collective compact. And so I'll go ahead and read the statements. And if it's something that you feel that you can commit to, we'd love to, again, see either hearts or raised hands or any sort of reaction that you want to have. So first, we're committed to imagining a co-generative future together. I am committed to innovation, beginning with where my institution, and my community is at. And lastly, we are committed to movement. Thank you, everyone. Loving seeing all the little hearts and thumbs up in the chat. And then if you can get to the next slide, awesome. So another thing that we like to do at each of our sessions is we know that change starts with small actions that we do. And so between each of our sessions, we have about a month, and we ask folks to try one small step toward cogeneration. And so we'd love to see, for those who are returning, if there's any small, faithful next steps that you tried in the meantime and what that was like for you. And feel free to put that in the chat. And for those who are brand new, this is a good time for you to get a sense of the types of things that other folks are doing and to celebrate that and maybe even steal a couple ideas. Feel free to put that in the chat. And, ooh, I love that. Sending info in the network. Yes, that's going to be an ask I'm going to give to all of you. Okay. So if you can move to the next slide. And so then another piece of what we like to do is, again, to get a sense of who's in the room, we like for you to self-identify where you are at right now with this work. So are you cogen curious? Are you a newbie, trying to learn more about it, see how it fits into what you're doing? Are you a connector, doing some things, but it's fragmented or unsustained? And then are you a champion? So you've had sustained engagement in intergeneration work. You've made it as a core commitment in your sort of daily activities. And so feel free to drop that into the chat so we can get a sense of who's in the room. connector. Alyssa, yes, I'm a connector too. I definitely identify with that. Nicole, incorporating a network to begin building activities. Yes, I worked with Nicole on some of that, and she's definitely a connector. She's doing a lot of great work. Champion, Andy, yeah, I would love to talk to you and learn more about where you're at. And then at Sesame 3 Generation Mentoring, championing the movement. Awesome. Yeah, you're gonna get a chance to hopefully learn a little bit about more three Gen later in the presentation. Okay. And new to this group, thank you, Naomi. Yeah, so love to see all everywhere, wherever, whatever stage you're at is great. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna drop a link into the chat for Mentimeter, which is gonna ask you a few questions so that we get a sense of who everyone is and what talents and gifts and strengths they bring to this community. And Mentimeters are a really cool sort of tool that kind of like will make word clouds and different things so we can see what we.
Okay, it looks like everyone's joined. And one of our first questions that I'm curious about, and everybody else in the room is, I'm sure, where are you from? What state are you joining us from? So if you can put up a dot. A lot of, okay, great. New Mexico.
And I know that I'm new to this group, but I'm jumping into it to offer some support with Jenna as well with her voice. I'm in the office at the University of Texas El Paso as well at the Center for Community Engagement. So I'm happy to let you rest your voice for other pieces of this, Jenna. Just to kind of think through. It's great to see it, especially because I know I'm the newest in the room. Exciting to be thinking of kind of this representation and seeing where we have some strength more, I think, in the Northeast, and a little bit in the Midwest. So this work that's kind of resonating in this area. Yeah, excellent. Do
Yeah, and
you,
it's
oh yeah.
I'm just, to say it, it's so exciting to see so many different dots in different parts of the United States. And there's only 16 of us online. So that is so cool. Usually when it's a smaller group, it's concentrated, but no, we're representing, across the US. So that's cool.
This is such a great list to just like looking at, again, thinking about the representation across the country and seeing that, but also kind of looking at the varieties of institutions and universities that we see represented, knowing that it's so important to have this work in all of these different areas, and awesome to see kind of all different kinds of colleges and institutions being, some smaller institutions bringing out this work and some larger like Wayne State, Kent State, these really large institutions where this is being, where we're seeing kind of a focus and an interest in this. Hope this will help us to better really understand who we've got in the room as well. I jumped the gun. Awesome.
So I think overall, mostly institutions of higher education and community partners. We can look at now what is, your role.
Mm. Seems like we're getting a big staff representation, which is not a surprise when we think about this work and kind of the way that it oftentimes is driven in institutions. Staff plays such an important role in setting kind of the groundwork for how we grow these kinds of projects and how we bring this terminology and this understanding. Um, we've got some undergrad students. It looks like one grad student jumping in, one administrator, and two folks who are other. Anybody who indicated that they're other want to just jump in and share what that role is, just to help us kind of understand who you are in your in that identity. Don't be shy to unmute yourself and share with us.
So I represent, together with Andrew, a group of alumni from Sesame Workshop who worked at Sesame Street for over 40 years. And we created this not-for-profit organization basically to have older adults like me mentor younger people, both in college and in high school, who in turn were mentoring even younger children. And we use Sesame segments to do that. So we kind of fall in between all of these different divisions, but we're working with several colleges, community colleges in Los Angeles and Colorado State University as a first attempt in Colorado, working with faculty and students. And we're happy to talk about it later. So thank you for inviting us to this. Appreciate it.
Excellent. So glad to kind of hear that perspective that you bring in. Any of the other person who jumped in as other want to share what your role is? You don't have to.
Who's the administrator? That's what I'm curious about.
Nobody wants to own up.
Yeah, right. And the graduates, undergraduate and graduate students, again, I love the mix in the room. I love how diverse everyone's role is and where we come from. This is so exciting. Now, because we're going to be talking about institutions of higher education, how do you envision or already impact student success? This is a short answer, but yeah, heavy duty question. Are you already mentoring students? Are you student leader? Are you leading programs? Are you
developing programs, working with faculty or to develop courses, working in research?
Love it. Funneling curiosity. That's very important. Yeah. Yep, exposure to diverse perspectives. Awesome. I love these responses. So keep these in mind throughout the presentation, because it really does lean on the heart of why the work is important for you.
Awesome.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much for sharing. And the last question, I promise. Connections and ideas. Great.
And we're hopeful that the format for this session is really going to allow for people to have those kind of connections within our interests. So we're hoping to really meet that need.
Yeah. Well, continue to finish sharing. I'm going to go back to the presentation. And thanks so much. There's not, thankfully, going to be a lot of talking on my end. But maybe Rue, you can chime in on this one. It's just a reminder about what we mean by cogeneration.
Yeah, sure. Um, so it's a lot of this is in this movement. A lot of what we're doing is about creating a shared language around what this work is. And when we talk about cogeneration in this affinity network, we're referring to shared power in shaping goals, knowledge, and outcomes between generations. And so this is something that's done with all stakeholders. Students, as we saw, like in the Mentimeter, there's people from very different positionalities, and all of them are stakeholders in cogeneration. And we're trying to shift from just being in the same spaces and maybe one group doing something for another group to actually generations coming together as equal partners in this work and creating solutions to problems. And then the focus for today is going to be about cogeneration becoming an institutional practice. So in the past, we talked about like piloting new experiments, maybe small projects, in one department, these sort of grassroots things. How do we then, once we start to see some success with those, move from those project-based efforts to entire systems so that it becomes a part of your institution college-wide. And so we're going to be talking about ways to embed across the curriculum through partnerships with the community and in campus life. So an opening question for you is, imagine that you are meeting with a senior administrator and they ask, how does your cogeneration work matter to this institution? How would you answer that question? And what institutional priorities would you reference for that? And so I believe, are we gonna do this in breakouts, or do we want to just get everyone to kind of popcorn out?
I think it's okay if everyone popcorns out. Yeah.
Feel free to just unmic or drop in the chat.
And I'm curious, do you think that you can answer this question right away? How fast or easy is it to answer this question for you? Don't be shy.
Are you looking for an answer?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you one. Nicole will pop up. Okay, so basically, if I was going into President Deacon of our university, I would kind of play on it because our rival college has got these older adults in these ads with the word retool underneath. So they're targeting older adults to come back to college. And our campus is over 25% of older adults. So I would use my little stats and I would bring all that together and tell them why that would benefit the college the most and benefit our students. So that's kind of part of what is going on into a project that's that we're working on. So we're going to use PR. We're going to use the college PR.
Well, it sounds like,
I know that was very basic, but I just broke it down. So that's,
but it sounds like you have support from your college. It sounds like if there's a marketing group that's interested, it sounds like you have support. So that's great.
Oh, absolutely.
Just
Yeah, this
by
is very exciting.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing, Nicole. Is there anybody who has a hard time answering this question? Just, off the top of your head. Don't be shy. You can raise your hand in the
I can chime in. This is Andy. I'm off screen because I'm actually I'm in transit right now. But really building on what Nicole said, I think the school that I'm thinking of is a Catholic institution. It's over 100 years old. And so the whole notion of perpetuity and mission and, stewarding generations and, I frequently, in my role as I was a diversity officer there, I frequently talk about if we're not, um, cultivating and graduating BIPOC students, graduates, our alumni network is not going to reflect, the school of tomorrow if we're not nurturing them today. And so to me, this is, any kind of intergenerational commitment, especially, as we get more and more non-traditional age or older students, which is perfect. So I think I would be building out what Nicole's saying, and I would really tie it to mission and sort of institutional responsibility to steward the institution and those relationships over, the next century, if you will.
Great. Great. Rue, I don't know why we're presenting everybody. This is awesome. This is great. Thank you so much for sharing, Andy. Yes, I think, sometimes the question it could be hard. But Rue, I don't know if you want to add on.
Yeah, sure. So what I loved about both Andy and Nicole's answers is there can be like a business case that can be made for this, and there can also be a mission alignment case that can be meant for this in terms of strategic priorities of an organization. But it can be a hard question to answer because it's deeply meaningful, it's relationship driven, and sometimes it's hard to sort of take that and translate that into strategy, scale, mission, things like that. So how do we take the language of relationship and turn it into institutional language? And I think that's a little bit about what Nicole and Andy were sort of referring to in their examples. Um, and so I think it has to be very intentional, right? And so we have to really think about like what is the mission and institutional identity. And as Andy mentioned in their case, they're thinking about like who are the students that are completing, who's going to end up in the alumni network. Is that going to reflect the diversity and the responsibility that they have to their community? And Nicole talked about, hey, enrollment is kind of an issue right now. There's competing schools in this market that are going to scoop up these students and meet that need if we don't. And so strategic plans, presidential priorities, benchmarks that they're looking at, as well as student success and learning frameworks, are all things that you can look at for your institution and see how intergeneration could actually move those things forward. And then there's also, accreditation. All higher ed institutions, there's an accreditation body that sort of keeps them legit. And how can we tie intergeneration into those priorities? Is there anything else you want to add to that, Jenna?
Maybe Naomi, you can take this one.
Sure. So we are here at the University of Texas, El Paso, and UTEP is kind of a unique institution in a lot of different ways that we're incredibly proud of. And one of the things that UTEP has really done well, that from a community engagement standpoint and a CoGenerate standpoint, is to really embed these kinds of ideals across the institution between their mission statement and their QEP. And that's been really helpful, I think, in the institutionalization of this work is having kind of these visuals and really having the university demonstrate how important this work is. And so we've also really been able to utilize the ways that community engagement has been embedded into the institution in forwarding this work. So just a couple of different things that you can see, right? When Jenna was making the slide, she had put up our mission statement. We're a comprehensive public research university that's increasing access to excellence in higher education, thinking about public values and positively impacting health, culture, and education. And again, thinking about the ways that with cogeneration, all of being able to kind of consider all of these different parts of the mission statement, I think as a way to kind of strengthen the work, as well. And for us, like within this, really thinking about the quality. So we have these kind of UTEP Edge advantages that we use at our university. And these are kind of the advantages that for our students of thinking about how is it that students after their UTEP education are going to be the most prepared kind of to take on the world around them? And interestingly enough, it's really important to also consider that our students, the university utilizes this language and is helping the students to kind of consider this language, and also being able to use this language as a mirror in the development of this kind of programming and thinking has also, I think, been really helpful for us at UTEP.
Yeah. So if an administrator were to ask me why, how important is cogeneration for the institution? I have several things that I can use as my anchor to say, well, in our mission, this is how we hope to impact our region. This right here is our strategic plan. These are two specific goals in our strategic plan. And then this up here is our QEP, our Quality Enhancement Plan. Institutions, I don't know if you're familiar, but they have to every 10 years, based on who their accreditation agency is, they require institutions to go through 10-year student success plans. And because if not, after 10 years, you hope that there'd be something else that your institution can use as a framework to increase student success. And so this last 10 years was the UTEP Edge was our student success framework, as Naomi mentioned. And so there's a lot in there already that I can say, look, this is how cogeneration opportunities within our institution impacts our student success framework, our quality enhancement plan, our strategic plan, and even our mission.
Yeah, and what I love about that is that there's like this broad applicability to the UTEP example, because we know, like, demographically, we know that the workforce is is becoming more intergenerational, right? We're seeing people from across all generations working. People are not necessarily retiring at 65, they're continuing to work for a lot longer. And so the more exposure that students get to those other generations, the better prepared they're going to be for the workforce. So I think that's a really great, UTEP is really modeling what other institutions can do. We'd like to talk talk a little bit now about, we've been making the case, but then there's more to this than making the case. And so how does institutional alignment turn cogeneration into an institutional responsibility? So seeing the ways in which it aligns is just the starting point. It's not the end point. We got to figure out how to actually embed it into practice, and how the institution actually operates. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some ways to do that next. And so, right, not just endorsing it, but actually embedding it. There's different ways of doing this. We can look at academic integration. So how can we bring cogeneration into courses, assignments, other types of credit-bearing experiences, curriculum requirements for students, based on their major, and then also learning management system, things like Canvas and Blackboard. How can it be integrated into those systems? We can look at student life integration. So how can we have co-curricular programs, different types of events on campus, funding for maybe like a co-generational student organization, and different types of recognition structures to sort of incentivize students to sort of get involved with co-generation. And then with that, student leadership, so how can we actually give specific roles to students, whether that be a paid student position, an ambassador position, other types of peer leadership models. And then there's institutional partnerships. And so, how can we partner with members of the community, with other institutions, to embed this work? And then campus-wide practices. So that's kind of speaking into, like, how are we changing the culture here? How can we create a shared language? How can we bring small moments of co-generational engagement to the things we're already doing? How can we build rituals and around this? And so I think a little bit about like which of these type mechanisms already exist on your campus, and could this be adapted to support cogeneration? Um, and I don't know if now is the time to talk about it or not, but at my institution, we don't have cogeneration embedded into our campus yet. But something that we've been working on recently is embedding a voting culture on campus. And so a lot of these mechanisms are things that we've used on my campus and I think can be translated to cogeneration as well.
Yeah.
Hey, Rue,
Yes.
I want to share something with you all. So I have an advisor for this program, and this advisor is in a different department. They're in the campus. It's not who you think, who I partnered with. It's a different person. But anyway, so now they are completing as a student their master's in public health. So we had a meeting this morning and it was interesting. It was kind of fun to talk and say, hey, what are you seeing in class? What are you seeing with the students? How is it working when you're talking to them? But the bottom line of all of this was, so today, when we had the legacy meeting, and when I was hearing about ageism and in the different ways, it really impacted me. And I really have taken on the term, the coining of building momentum. And so I was able to share that with this person this morning. Not only they were surprised too, they were like, oh, and they were like writing it down. They're like, okay, that's my new word. And they are so connected with so many people across this campus in all different, aspects of all the roles. And I'm like, okay, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build momentum for this. We want to combat ageism. We want to gather together because we're all in this together. And so those are just kind of some things that I want to throw out. I'm doing the shared language. It's good stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. Yeah, I see that as an example of shared language. And I also see that, and by the way, folks in the room who don't know, Nicole is one of our student ambassadors. So what I'm seeing there is like you in the role of the ambassador, making connections with folks who can help you institutionalize it in other areas of campus. So that's great.
Oh, yeah, I've been working it. Okay.
All
Thank you.
right. Yeah, thank you.
And I know there's a lot of us that are staff, and it's, part of our work that we do already. Some of these mechanisms here is what we already do. And so thinking about ways that, the work can be adapted to support cogeneration and learning from others and how that has been done at other institutions is a really great opportunity. And I think what has been meant for the affinity group to kind of help support each other in doing. And so hopefully, through this group that we've been establishing, there are ways that we can learn from one another. And we're going to have some breakout rooms in just a bit so that we'll be able to talk a little bit more about it and share some ideas. And so within the institution, I work directly with community engagement, and in community engagement again has been noted as a core priority within our institution. And so I've leveraged community engagement, and I would like, I wonder if other institutions here, but I'm using this as an example, and why, I invited Naomi here was because I found a lot of similarities between how I've worked through embedding community engagement and thinking about how co-generation can kind of fit in within that. And there are some strong principles that I think we need to think about, reciprocal principles, mutually um, reciprocal things that we need to think through when developing partnerships with community members, community organizations, because I think, we can't do it alone. And so one of the things I thought would be important today was just to kind of remember or talk a little bit about those principles of engagement and what it looks like when we're doing things um, together with our community members, with participants, with generations. And so I've invited Naomi to talk a little bit about, excuse me.
And I think you all are experts in this at your own campuses, and so just a couple things. And I would love to hear also, with these practices. But when working with faculty, and I know that some of you may do this in your work, just encouraging, oftentimes faculty will come with an idea that they want and will kind of work through that idea on their own, and then think about how they're going to implement that into the community. But really, with true cogeneration, you want to be bringing in your older adult population. You want to be bringing in everyone to the table at the beginning of the development of the project, right? Because otherwise, we lose the value, we lose the knowledge. So thinking about that time frame with development within courses, and then in the work that with community partners, we oftentimes really want to think about when we use the language of mutually beneficial, how is everybody going to gain from this experience? So in the development of the syllabus, what are the gained outcomes that are for everybody who's involved? How will everybody learn? How can everybody contribute? The other thing to kind of really consider in courses is thinking about the timeline that's being set. We on the campuses, we run in a 15-week here at UTEP. We're in 15 weeks. We run in this like 15-week world, and we sometimes can forget that time frame, it doesn't fit outside of other people's timeframes. So making sure kind of in the development of co-generated classes that you're being honest and consistent about what a timeline looks like, and having a conversation about that in the development of projects that you're going to do together. So if you are creating a course that is co-generated, thinking about what's realistic for all populations, what's realistic for the students in the classes, what's realistic for your partners. And I think that's a really important part of it. I think the other thing that I always think about in this work is it can be easy for faculty to assume that they know the answers, and to lead with that. And so really making sure that the knowledge of your co-generated partner is leading these projects, right? Because they actually oftentimes know better than what you do as faculty, what it is that they're looking for, right? And so making sure that you're kind of creating those bridges. And then thinking about just in developing these partnerships and how do we kind of leverage difference and make sure that we're creating spaces. Just a couple things within community engagement, we always focus on these kinds of partnerships take time. So making sure that we're listening first and talking second. So really building that time in to listen, and really being aware of gaps in language, and kind of generational understandings. I teach first year students, and I am impressed by how much I don't understand always from my first year students, and what the gaps in that language are for what they're using and the kind of technology. So when we're we're creating projects that have outcomes that are kind of bridging that age gap, really thinking about what's the language that we're going to utilize together so that everybody can access this knowledge, and creating kind of a clear guideline for that language and how folks communicate as well. So thinking through, is there an expectation that in the development of this project, we're going to use a technology that everyone is comfortable with? Because it can be really easy on both sides to forget where people are comfortable and where people are able to communicate. And then the last thing to really consider that Jenna and I have been talking about quite a bit here is kind of the ways that cultural expectations with older adults look different in different communities. Here in El Paso, we are an 85% Mexican American community, and there are many of our students at UTEP live in multi-generational homes, and our student population oftentimes has a much more kind of culturally relevant understanding of multi-generational families, even than our faculty who are coming in from outside of El Paso who are teaching here in this space. So thinking about, again, kind of the expectations and kind of cultural knowledge that's also really important in developing out these relationships. I'm kind of calling out faculty and calling out myself in this, and really thinking through that in building out these relationships, it may be that our students our best assets. Our university students are best assets in kind of building these connections and understanding how to kind of what the needs may be that we as folks who, if you are an individual who isn't living within a multi-generational home or isn't from who just come, we all have kind of different cultural values around older adults. So just being super aware of that and not being scared to address that in developing out these relationships. So those were kind of the 3 points that are a big part of what we had think about within our own community engagement practices that we thought would be relevant within this kind of cogenerate language.
Thank you so much, Naomi. Just like, yeah, I really, really appreciate that piece about like the wisdom that already exists among us that we can share with each other. So we're going to move into breakouts now for an activity, and you can you're going to have 3 options for breakout rooms, depending on the context you're most interested in. So for those who want to talk a little bit more about curriculum and teaching in terms of institutionalization, you can hop in with Naomi. If you're interested in how community partnerships might work, we'll put you into a group with 3G mentoring. And then for those who want to have discussions about student life and leadership, there will be a breakout room that you can join with me. And I'm going to drop the questions into the chat. These are some of our discussion prompts that we can talk about. So I'll see you in there. We'll have about 8 to 10 minutes, maybe a little bit less. Welcome back, everybody. How was that for you? I hope you had engaging discussions. Let's see, so everybody's back. We've still got like 6 people missing, looks like.
Nope.
Anybody have any big takeaways? Yeah, Lewis, I see you nodding.
Yes, for sure. There's just so much in common. It's such a joy to be in touch with people who are thinking about the same kinds of things and really trying to connect generations on campus and for people off campus to really create community with connections. So it was a delight to have a very brief introduction to this whole field with Nicole and with Naomi. So thank you for that, and Terry too, who was on. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Lewis. Yeah, it's something that we'd like to talk about in these sessions is that like we sort of get started on these conversations and they happen for 5 minutes, but we really want to help build a community around this. So feel free to like exchange contact information and have coffee chats, outside of these sessions and all of those things to sort of help so that we can all help support each other in this work. So I think in synthesis, let me see if Jenna's back. Today we kind of talked about how there's sort of these shared themes and language across institutions that we can use to embed this work. And then there's also common barriers and leverage points. And so while there are ways that you want to adapt it to your local context, there's definitely some common strategies that we can think about when it comes to embedding. And just a closing thought that cogeneration becomes embedded when institutions can clearly articulate why it matters and then build the systems to support it. So we start with that mission and vision and why it matters, and then we build around that. So thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to do, just as we did at the beginning, we're going to kind of ground again in our collective compact. And just as we sort of you had a chance to see like returners talk a little bit about the faithful next steps that they took in January. We'd love for you to think about how you might imagine doing a faithful next step in between now and the next session. Feel free to drop it in the chat. And then as you can see, Daniel has opened up a poll so that we can get some feedback from you about how this session was for you. Because as this series wraps up, we want to, as we have future programming, we'd love to learn about how we can better meet your needs. So thank you. And we've got 83% participation. I'll give you a few more minutes to fill out the. And then as you're doing that, we have one final session left in this series, and that is going to be on March 11th. It's a Wednesday again, same time, same place, and it's going to be about sustaining and scaling. And so we're going to talk about what does it take to grow, sustain, and deepen this work over time once it has been institutionalized. So yeah. We hope to see you there. And thank you so much, all of you, for filling out the poll and for joining us today and helping us to continue the momentum.